I walked into that lawyer's office in downtown Chicago wearing the same lavender nightgown I'd worn for 3 days straight, covered by a coat I'd borrowed from a neighbor. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the envelope. The receptionist looked at me like I was lost, like I'd wandered in from the street by mistake. Maybe I had. I didn't know anymore what I was doing or where I belonged. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, was younger than I expected. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He asked me to sit down before he told me anything. And that's when I knew. Something was about to change. He opened a file folder, read some numbers, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't interpret. Pity? Shock. He said the words slowly, like he was afraid I might break. $2.1 million. From a trust. From someone named Margaret Reeves, who died 6 years ago in Manhattan. My mother's cousin. A woman I'd never met, never heard of, who'd left me everything because I was her last living heir. I couldn't process it. I sat there in that office with tears running down my face, still wearing that nightgown under my borrowed coat. And all I could think was that I'd been protected. Even when I thought I was completely alone, someone I'd never met had been watching over me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back. Let me show you how I ended up in that office, how I ended up with nothing, wearing a nightgown in the middle of the afternoon, so desperate I was ready to give up entirely. 3 months before that moment in the lawyer's office, I was sitting in the back pew of an empty church after everyone else had left Sunday service. The silence felt safer than my own home. The afternoon light came through stained glass windows and made patterns on the wooden floor, purple and gold and deep red. I was still wearing my lavender nightgown under my coat because I hadn't had the energy to change. It was summer, the kind of humid Chicago summer when the heat makes everything slow down and the fan spins all day without ever making you feel cool. I held my mother's cardigan in my lap. It still smelled like her after all these years, like lavender soap and the peppermint candies she always kept in her pockets. She'd been gone 4 years, but sometimes when I held that sweater, I could almost hear her voice, almost feel her hand on my shoulder, steady and strong like it had been when I was a child. The church was cool and still. I pressed my face into that cardigan and let myself cry where no one could hear me, where no one could tell me to be quiet or ask what was wrong or pretend they cared when they didn't. My son's voice echoed in my head. "Mom, you're being dramatic. Sarah's just trying to help. You're making this harder than it needs to be." But I wasn't being dramatic. I was being erased. It had started 6 months earlier, so gradually I almost didn't notice. My shotgun house with rooms lined up in a row and a back porch sat in a quiet cul-de-sac on the south side where families had lived for generations. I'd raised my son there, paid off the mortgage 20 years ago by working double shifts at the hospital, by going without, by sacrificing everything so he could have better. I thought I'd die in that house. I thought it would always be mine. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, had been so sweet at first. Coming over with casseroles, offering to help with bills, saying I shouldn't have to worry about things at my age. She'd sit at my kitchen table with her laptop and her bright smile, shuffling papers, explaining things in a voice you'd use with a child. "Just some forms, Mom. Just to make things easier. You trust us, don't you?" And I did. God help me. I did. I signed everything she put in front of me while my son stood in the doorway, silent. Power of attorney, joint account access, transfer of deed. I didn't understand what any of it meant. I just knew that she was family, that my son loved her, that they were trying to help. Within 2 months, they had control of everything. My bank accounts, my house, my life. The money started disappearing first. Small amounts, then larger ones. When I asked about it, Sarah would pat my hand and say she was managing things, that I didn't need to worry. Then my debit card stopped working. My checkbook vanished. When I asked for money to buy groceries, Sarah would sigh like I was being difficult and hand me $20 like it was charity. I was 58 years old. I'd worked my entire life. That house was mine. That money was mine. And suddenly, I couldn't even buy myself a carton of milk without asking permission. The worst day, the day I knew I was trapped, I was standing in my own kitchen, making banana pudding layered with vanilla wafers the way my mother used to. It was one of the few things that still felt like mine. That recipe. Those Sunday dinners we used to have when life was normal. Sarah walked in talking on her phone, laughing. "She has nowhere else to go," she said to whoever was on the other end. "Can you believe it? She's completely dependent on us now." She looked right at me when she said it, still smiling. I stood there with the mixing bowl in my hands, vanilla pudding dripping from the spoon. And something inside me just broke. Through the doorway, I could see my son. He was listening. He heard what his wife had said. He looked at me, and for just a second, I saw something in his face. Shame, maybe. Or guilt. Then he looked away and walked back to the living room. That moment stretched out forever. I watched him walk away, and it wasn't just that moment I was seeing. It was every time he'd chosen her over me. Every time he'd stayed silent when she talked down to me. Every time he'd pretended not to notice when she treated me like a burden instead of his mother. I set the bowl down carefully, my hands moving on autopilot, and walked to the back porch. My legs felt hollow, like they might not hold me. The summer heat hit me like a wall, but I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything except this vast emptiness opening up inside my chest. I sat on the old wicker chair my mother used to love and stared at the small patch of yard I'd tended for 30 years. The tomato plants were wilting from the heat. I should water them, I thought distantly. But what was the point? Nothing I grew belonged to me anymore. Not the tomatoes, not the house, not even my own life. That's when I understood. I wasn't their mother or family anymore. I was a burden they were warehousing until I died. They fed me. They let me stay in the back room. But I had no access to my own money, no control over my own life, no way out. I became a prisoner in the house I'd paid off working night shifts for 20 years. Have you ever felt that? The moment you realize the people you love most in the world see you as disposable? That they're counting down the days until you're gone so they can have what's yours? I wanted to die. I'm not ashamed to say it now. Sitting in that church pew, holding my mother's sweater, I wanted to stop existing. What was the point? I had nothing. I was nothing. Just an old woman nobody wanted, taking up space in her own home. But my mother hadn't raised a quitter, even when I wanted to be. The betrayal wasn't just what they'd done to my accounts and my house. It was deeper than that. My son and I had a complicated history. He'd been angry with me for years after his father left, like it was my fault somehow. We barely spoke through his 20s. Then my mother got sick 4 years ago, during what I now think of as the last good year I can remember. She'd had a stroke. The doctor said she had maybe 6 months. My son came home to help, and in those final months, something shifted between us. I took care of my mother in her final months, and it healed old wounds. My son saw me differently, saw how I'd sacrificed, how I'd given everything. We talked about things we'd never discussed. He apologized for being distant. He said he understood now what it meant to be a parent, what it cost. I remember one night specifically. We were sitting on my mother's porch while she slept inside. It was fall, the air cooling down, leaves skittering across the wooden boards. My son had been crying. He reached over and took my hand. "I'm sorry I blamed you for Dad leaving," he said. "I'm sorry I wasted so many years being angry." "You were hurting," I told him. "Children hurt when families break." "But you were hurting too," he said. "And I made it worse. I added to your burden when I should have helped carry it." We sat there in the darkness, holding hands like we hadn't done since he was small, and I thought maybe we'd finally found our way back to each other. Maybe all those lost years could be recovered. Maybe we could be a family again. When my mother died, he held me while I cried. He said he'd never let me be alone, that he'd take care of me the way I'd taken care of her. I believed him, and maybe that's why the betrayal cut so deep. He'd seen me at my most vulnerable. He'd promised to protect me. Then he let his wife destroy me while he stood in the doorway and said nothing. My mother had sacrificed everything so her children could have more. She'd worked 3 jobs. She went without so we could have new shoes for school. We had a complicated relationship, full of arguments and misunderstandings, but at the end, we finally understood each other. She died with nothing, having given everything away. Or so I thought. I left the church as the sun was setting, that cardigan wrapped around my shoulders like armor. I walked home through my neighborhood, past houses where families were sitting down to dinner, where people lived normal lives. My street, my quiet cul-de-sac where families have lived for generations, felt like foreign territory now. That wasn't my home anymore. It was their house. I just existed in it. Sarah was in the kitchen when I came in through the back porch. She didn't look up from her phone. "Your dinner's in the fridge," she said flatly. "Leftover meatloaf." I went to the back room they'd given me. It used to be my son's childhood bedroom. Now it held a twin bed, a dresser, and boxes of things they'd cleared out of the rest of the house. My things. My life, reduced to boxes. I had a small altar in the corner with candles and prayer cards, though I wasn't sure who I was praying to anymore. My mother's photo sat there, her serious face staring back at me. What would she say if she could see me now? Would she be ashamed that I'd let this happen? That I'd trusted my own son to destroy me? In that photo, she's wearing the same cardigan I now carried everywhere. It was taken at my high school graduation, one of the few times I remember seeing her smile without worry lines creasing her forehead. She'd worked a double shift the night before, so she could take the morning off to be there. Her hands were calloused and rough, but when she hugged me that day, I felt nothing but pride radiating from her. Now those same hands couldn't reach me, couldn't protect me. I was on my own in a way I'd never been, even after she died. I lit a candle and prayed anyway. Not for salvation, just for strength to make it through one more day. The flame flickered in the draft from the broken window they wouldn't fix, casting shadows that danced across my mother's face like she was trying to speak to me. The weeks that followed blurred together into one long nightmare of humiliation. They controlled everything. When I could shower, what I could eat, whether I could leave the house. Sarah started locking the front door and taking the key, saying it was for my own safety, that I might wander off and get lost. I was 58, not 85. I wasn't confused. I was trapped. My clothing showed the deterioration of my situation. That lavender nightgown I'd had for 20 years became my uniform because I didn't have the energy to fight for anything else. It hung loose on my frame because I'd lost weight. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt hungry. Food lost its meaning when every meal was measured out like rations, when every bite reminded me I had no control. The neighborhood I'd loved for 30 years started to feel hostile. Women I'd known for decades would see me on my rare walks, and their faces would change. Pity mixed with relief that it wasn't happening to them. Some would cross the street rather than talk to me. Others would ask if I was okay in voices that didn't really want an answer. Mrs. Patterson, who'd lived 3 houses down since before I moved to the street, stopped me one afternoon. I was shuffling down the sidewalk in my nightgown and coat, going nowhere in particular, just trying to feel like I still had the freedom to walk. "Dolores," she said, her voice careful. "Honey, is everything all right?" I looked at her. This woman I'd known for 3 decades. We'd shared recipes, watched each other's children grow, grieved together when her husband died. She knew me. She knew this wasn't right. "I'm fine," I heard myself say. The lie tasted like ash. She touched my arm, her fingers light and uncertain. "If you need anything." But she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't offer to help. She didn't ask what was really happening, because asking meant getting involved, and getting involved meant acknowledging that this could happen to anyone, that it could happen to her. "Thank you," I said, and kept walking. I was disappearing. Not dying, but fading away into nothing while everyone watched. One afternoon I was sitting on the back porch, the fan spinning overhead, trying to find some relief from the summer heat. A woman I didn't recognize was walking down the alley behind our house. She stopped when she saw me, studied me for a long moment. "You okay, honey?" she asked. Such a simple question. But the way she said it, like she actually wanted to know, like my answer mattered, made me start crying. I couldn't stop. She came up on the porch and sat beside me, didn't say anything, just sat there while I sobbed. When I finally calmed down enough to breathe, she introduced herself. Her name was Dorothy. She worked for Adult Protective Services, though I didn't know that yet. She'd been in the neighborhood investigating another case, and something about me had caught her attention. Later, she told me it was my eyes. She said I looked like someone drowning in plain sight while everyone walked by. "Tell me what's happening," she said gently. And I did. Not everything, but enough. The words came spilling out in a rush, disconnected and desperate. My son, his wife, the papers I signed, the money that disappeared, the locked doors. Dorothy listened without interrupting. Her face calm, but her eyes sharp. When I finished, she reached into her bag and pulled out a card. "This is my direct number," she said. "Not the office line, my personal cell. You call me anytime, day or night. Do you understand? Anytime." I took the card with shaking hands. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I see you," she said simply. "And because this isn't right. What they're doing to you isn't right." She gave me her card. "Call me if you need help," she said. "Anytime." I put that card in my pocket and touched it like a talisman, proof that someone in the world still saw me as human. But I didn't call. Not yet. Because what would I say? My son had power of attorney. Everything was legal. I'd signed the papers myself. Who would believe me? Who would care? The summer dragged on. The heat became oppressive, the kind that makes you feel like you're breathing underwater. The fan in my room spun day and night, but never made a difference. I spent hours lying on that twin bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, counting the ways I'd failed myself. Some days I wouldn't move for hours. I'd lie there listening to the sounds of the house, tracking their movements by the creaking floorboards. Sarah's quick, sharp footsteps, my son's heavier tread. Sometimes I'd hear them laugh together in the kitchen, and it would transport me back to better times, when I thought we were a family, when I believed love meant something more than convenience. At night, I could hear them in the living room, my son and his wife, talking about their plans. A vacation to Mexico. New furniture. Maybe a bigger house eventually, when this one sold. They talked about my house like I was already gone, like I was already buried in the ground beside my mother. One night, I heard Sarah laugh. That same bright laugh she'd had when she first started coming around with her casseroles and her fake concern. "It's perfect," she was saying. "The house will be worth at least $300,000 once we fix it up. And her savings, even after we spent some, there's still almost $50,000 left." "She worked her whole life for this," my son said quietly. "And now it's ours," Sarah replied, no hesitation in her voice. "That's how inheritance works, babe. Parents work, kids inherit. She should be grateful we're taking care of her instead of putting her in a home." I pressed my face into my pillow so they wouldn't hear me crying. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rage, but what was the point? They'd won. They had everything. I had nothing. The only thing they couldn't take was my faith, though even that was wearing thin. I still prayed at my little altar, still lit candles and whispered words I barely believed anymore. I prayed to my mother, to God, to anyone who might be listening. I prayed for a way out that didn't involve me giving up entirely. And slowly, without realizing it was happening, I started to give up anyway. I stopped fighting about the small things, stopped asking for my money back, stopped trying to leave the house. I just existed, day after day, waiting for it to be over. If you've ever felt that low, you know what I'm talking about. That point where surviving feels like too much work, where the weight of just breathing becomes unbearable. I wasn't suicidal exactly. I just didn't care anymore if I woke up the next morning. Dorothy from Adult Protective Services called a few times. I never answered. What was there to say? I'd done this to myself. I'd signed the papers. I'd trusted them. This was my fault. But Dorothy didn't give up. She kept calling. She left messages saying she was thinking about me, that help was available if I wanted it. She said things like, "You deserve better, and this isn't your fault, and nobody should have to live like this." I saved every message. Sometimes I'd play them back late at night just to hear another human voice saying I mattered. One message in particular I must have listened to 50 times. Her voice was soft but firm. "Dolores, this is Dorothy again. I know you're scared. I know you think there's no way out. But I need you to hear this. What they did was legal in form, but not in spirit. Power of attorney is supposed to help you, not control you. There are ways to fix this. There are people who can help. You just have to let us. Please call me back." The breaking point came on a Tuesday in late August. Sarah and my son were going out for the evening. She told me there was food in the fridge, that I should stay in my room, that they'd be back late. Then she locked the bedroom door from the outside. I sat on that twin bed and listened to them leave, heard the car start, heard them drive away, and I realized they'd locked me in, like a child, like a prisoner, like I was less than human. Something inside me that had been bending finally snapped. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't survive another day of being treated like a burden, like a problem to be managed until I died and freed them from the inconvenience of my existence. I needed to find a way out, any way out, even if it meant I ended up homeless, even if it meant I had to start over with absolutely nothing. I looked around that small room with fresh eyes. Everything I owned was in boxes, things they'd cleared out of the rest of the house. Most of it was junk, things I'd meant to sort through for years. Old clothes, old papers, old memories of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. I started going through the boxes, desperately searching for something to sell. Maybe jewelry they hadn't found. Maybe something. Anything with value I could use to get away. But they'd been thorough. Every piece of jewelry was gone. Every valuable was missing. All I had left were old tax returns, bank statements from closed accounts, newspaper clippings, and photographs of better days. I found my nursing school diploma in one box, yellowed and creased. I'd been so proud when I earned that. My mother had framed it, hung it in the living room like it was a masterpiece. Now it was crumpled at the bottom of a cardboard box, worthless. Just like me, I thought. Something that once had value, now discarded and forgotten. There were photos, too. My son as a baby, chubby-cheeked and smiling, his first day of school, his college graduation. I'd kept every memory, treasured every moment. Had he kept any memories of me? Or had I already been erased from his story, reduced to an obstacle between him and what he wanted? I was about to give up when I found the shoebox at the bottom of the last box. It was full of insurance papers and old documents, the kind of thing you keep meaning to throw away but never do. I was dumping it out, looking for anything when I saw the envelope. It was formal looking, expensive paper with a return address from a law firm in Manhattan. The postmark was 3 years old. It had been sent to my old address before I'd sold that house and moved here, then forwarded, then lost in the shuffle of mail I'd never sorted. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It was a letter from Harrison and Associates, attorneys at law, regarding the estate of Margaret Reeves. I read the words, but they didn't make sense. Margaret Reeves. I didn't know anyone named Margaret Reeves. The letter said she'd died 6 years ago, that she was my mother's first cousin, that I was her last living heir, that there was an inheritance held in trust, pending location of the beneficiary. There was a phone number, a case number, instructions to contact them immediately to claim the estate. I read it 3 times, 4 times. This couldn't be real. My mother never talked about having cousins, never mentioned anyone named Margaret. This had to be a mistake, or a scam, or my mind playing tricks on me because I wanted so desperately for something to save me. But the letterhead looked real. The phone number was real. The law firm existed. I looked them up on the ancient laptop they'd let me keep, The one with no internet connection, using the library's address to verify. Harrison and Associates, real lawyers, real office, in Manhattan. I sat on that floor with the letter in my hands and Dorothy's card in my pocket, and I made a decision. I had nothing left to lose. If this was real, it could save me. If it wasn't, I was no worse off than I already was. The next morning, after Sarah had left for work and my son was in the shower, I slipped out of the house. I didn't have a phone. They'd canceled my cell service months ago, saying I didn't need it. So I walked 6 blocks to a corner store and used their payphone, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. A receptionist answered. I explained who I was, gave her the case number, asked if the letter was real. She put me on hold. Minutes passed. I was sure she'd come back and tell me it was a mistake, that I'd misread something, that there was no inheritance. Instead, a man's voice came on the line. This is Gerald Harrison. Are you Dolores Jean Mathis, born May 12, 1968, daughter of Christine Marie Tucker? Yes, I whispered. Miss Mathis, we've been trying to reach you for 3 years. We need to verify your identity and discuss your inheritance from Margaret Reeves. Can you come to our office in New York? I don't have money for a plane ticket, I said. I don't have anything. There was a pause. Then, Miss Mathis, what's your current situation? Are you all right? And I broke. Standing in that corner store, people walking past, I told this stranger everything. How I'd signed papers I didn't understand. How my son and his wife had taken everything. How I was locked in a bedroom. How I had nothing. How I'd given up. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said quietly, Ms. Mathis, I'm going to help you. Stay where you are. I'm going to arrange for a local lawyer to meet you. Don't go back to that house if you don't feel safe. Do you understand? I understood. For the first time in months, someone was helping me without wanting something in return. The lawyer he sent was a woman named Patricia Chen. She met me at a coffee shop near the library later that day. She bought me lunch, the first real meal I'd eaten in weeks. A sandwich, soup, a piece of pie I couldn't finish but tried because she'd been so kind to order it. Then she listened to my story again and asked questions. Good questions, about the papers I'd signed, about the timeline, about whether I'd been coerced or misled. Did they explain what power of attorney meant? She asked. Sarah said it would make things easier, that I wouldn't have to worry about bills or paperwork. Did she explain that it would give her complete control over your finances? I shook my head. Did anyone suggest you get your own lawyer to review the documents before signing? No, my son was there. I trusted him. Patricia's jaw tightened. She made notes on a yellow legal pad, her handwriting quick and precise. You were financially abused, she said finally. What they did was legal in form, but not in spirit. The power of attorney was supposed to help you, not control you. We can fix this. But first we need to verify your inheritance, because that changes everything about your situation. That afternoon, with Patricia's help, I called Mr. Harrison back. He asked me dozens of questions, verified my identity 5 different ways. My mother's maiden name, my birthplace. Details only the real beneficiary would know. My grandmother's name, the street I grew up on, the hospital where I was born. Then he asked me to sit down, even though I was already sitting in a booth at that coffee shop with Patricia beside me. Miss Mathis, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Margaret Reeves was your mother's first cousin. They lost touch when Margaret moved to New York in the 1960s, but she never forgot her family. She made a fortune in real estate development, and when she died, she left detailed instructions that her estate should go to her surviving family members. You're her last living heir. How much? I whispered. $2.1 million, he said. After taxes and legal fees, the trust is valued at $2.1 million. It's been held in escrow waiting for you. It's yours, Ms. Mathis. It's been yours for 3 years. The coffee shop went silent, or maybe I just stopped hearing anything except my own heartbeat. $2.1 million. I tried to say something, but no words came out. Patricia grabbed my hand and squeezed it. "We'll get you that money," Mr. Harrison said. "We'll get you your life back. But first, let's make sure you're safe." That moment in the coffee shop, learning I had not only a way out, but a way to truly rebuild, was overwhelming. But it wasn't the most powerful moment. That came later, after Patricia had helped me open a new bank account, after Mr. Harrison had verified everything and started the process to transfer the inheritance. 3 days after that phone call, an express package arrived at Patricia's office. It was forwarded from the law firm in New York. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age, in an envelope marked, "To be delivered only to Dolores Jean Matis, upon release of inheritance funds." Patricia handed it to me with gentle eyes. "Take your time," she said. I went outside and sat on a bench in the sun. It was still summer, still hot, but the heat felt different now. Less oppressive, more like promise. The letter was written in shaky handwriting on expensive paper. It was dated 6 years ago, just before Margaret Reeves died. "Dear Dolores, we've never met, and that's my fault. I left Chicago when I was 19 and never looked back. I built a life in New York, made money, forgot where I came from, but I never forgot my cousin Christine, your mother. She wrote to me sometimes over the years, usually asking for nothing, just telling me about her life, about you, about how hard she worked to give you opportunities she never had, about how proud she was of you, even when things were difficult. I never wrote back. I wish I had. I wish I'd known her better. I wish I'd known you. I'm dying now, and I have no children. No one to leave this life I built. I could give it to charities, and I will give most of it away. But some of it needs to go to family, to Christine's daughter, to you. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. You'll probably have questions. Why you? Why now? The truth is simple. Because Christine loved you, and I loved Christine, even though I never told her. This is me trying to make up for all the years I stayed away, for all the times I could have helped and didn't. I don't know what your life looks like now. Maybe you're happy and successful and don't need this money. Maybe you're struggling. Either way, it's yours. Christine worked so hard her whole life. She deserved rest. She deserved comfort. She never got it. But maybe you can have what she couldn't. Maybe you can have security, peace, a chance to breathe without worrying how you'll survive. Use this money however you need. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel obligated. This isn't charity. This is family taking care of family, even when it's too late, even when we never met. I hope you have a good life, Dolores. I hope you know your mother loved you more than anything in this world. She told me so in every letter she ever sent, and I hope, wherever she is now, she knows she raised someone strong enough to survive whatever comes. Love from someone you never knew, Margaret Reeves. I sat on that bench and sobbed, not polite crying, deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere I didn't know existed inside me. People walked past and stared, but I didn't care. My mother's sweater was in my bag. I pulled it out and pressed it to my face and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back for months. Grief for my mother. Grief for the stranger who'd saved me. Grief for myself and everything I'd been through. But also gratitude. Such overwhelming gratitude, I could barely breathe through it. I'd been protected. Even when I thought I was alone. Even when I wanted to give up. Someone I never knew had been watching over me, had made sure I'd survive, had reached across years and miles and death itself to catch me right before I fell. That's when Dorothy found me. She'd been looking for me, worried when I didn't answer her calls. She sat down beside me on that bench, and I handed her the letter without speaking. She read it, then wrapped her arms around me and held me while I cried. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "You're going to be more than okay." And I believed her. The next few weeks moved fast. Patricia helped me revoke the power of attorney. It wasn't simple. There were court filings, documentation requirements, proof that I was mentally competent to make my own decisions. Sarah and my son fought it initially, claimed I was being manipulated by lawyers who wanted my money. But Patricia was thorough. She documented everything: the locked doors, the controlled access to food, the isolation, the financial exploitation. She interviewed neighbors who'd seen my deterioration. She got statements from Dorothy about the condition she'd found me in. The judge who reviewed the case was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She looked at my son and Sarah across the courtroom and said, "Power of attorney is a sacred trust. You violated that trust. The revocation is granted immediately." Mr. Harrison wired the first installment of funds to my new account. Dorothy connected me with resources and support services, a therapist who specialized in elder abuse, a support group for financial exploitation survivors, people who understood what I'd been through, who didn't judge me for trusting my own son. And I made a decision. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my life back. When I had enough money in my account to prove I wasn't helpless anymore, Patricia and I went to my house. My son answered the door. His face went pale when he saw the lawyer beside me. "We need to talk," I said. Sarah appeared behind him. Her smile was gone. She looked scared. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where she'd tricked me into signing papers 6 months ago. Patricia laid out the situation calmly, professionally. The power of attorney was revoked. The house was mine. The accounts were mine. They had 30 days to move out. My son tried to speak. "Mom, we were just trying to help. We thought—" I held up my hand. "I don't want to hear it," I said. "You heard her laugh about me having nowhere to go. You stood there and did nothing while she locked me in a room. You let her treat me like I was already dead." "That's not fair," Sarah interjected. "We gave you a place to live. We fed you. You stole from me," I said, my voice steady now. "You took everything I worked for and you treated me like a prisoner in my own home. We were taking care of you." Sarah's voice rose, desperate now. "No," I said quietly. "You were taking care of yourselves. You wanted my house, my money. You just had to wait for me to die first." The silence that followed was absolute. Tears were running down his face. "I'm sorry," my son whispered. "I know you are," I said, "but sorry doesn't give me back the 6 months you stole from me. Sorry doesn't erase the nights I went to bed wishing I wouldn't wake up. Sorry doesn't fix what you broke." But I was done. They never acknowledged what they'd really done, and I never gave them the chance. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need closure. I needed them gone. Within 3 weeks, they'd moved out. The house was mine again. My life was mine again. But I didn't want to stay there. Too many bad memories. Too many ghosts. So I sold it and moved back to my old neighborhood where I still had friends from childhood. A small house on a tree-lined street close to the church where I used to take my mother. The money gave me choices I'd never had before: security, peace, room to breathe. But more than that, it gave me purpose. I couldn't stop thinking about Margaret's letter, about how she'd wanted to help, about how my mother had worked herself to death trying to give me opportunities, about how I'd almost lost everything because I didn't know my rights, didn't know the signs of financial abuse, didn't know where to turn for help. I started volunteering with Dorothy's organization. I spoke at community centers about elder abuse, about financial exploitation, about the warning signs. I told my story over and over because maybe someone else wouldn't have to go through what I did. Each time I shared my story, it hurt a little less. The shame began to lift. I realized that what happened to me wasn't unique. Financial exploitation of elders is an epidemic hiding in plain sight. It happens in every neighborhood, every economic class, every family. The abusers count on shame and silence to keep their victims trapped. I refused to be silent anymore. Dorothy and I started a support group specifically for family financial abuse survivors. We met twice a month in a church basement, drinking coffee from styrofoam cups and sharing our stories. Some of the people who came were still trapped, looking for a way out. Others, like me, had escaped and were learning to rebuild. There was Martha, whose grandson had stolen her identity and racked up $50,000 in credit card debt. There was James, whose daughter-in-law had forged his signature on a reverse mortgage. There was Linda, who'd signed over power of attorney to her nephew and watched him drain her retirement account. We all had different stories, but the same core truth. The people who were supposed to love us had betrayed us for money. The first time I spoke publicly was terrifying. It was at a senior center on the west side, maybe 40 people in the audience. I stood at the podium in a nice dress, my hands shaking, looking out at faces that could have been mine, could have been my mother's. "My name is Dolores," I started, my voice barely audible. "And 6 months ago, I was locked in a bedroom in my own house, wearing a nightgown I'd had for 20 years, trying to figure out how to survive another day." You could have heard a pin drop. I told them everything, the shame of it, the isolation, the way I'd blamed myself, the way I'd almost given up. And then I told them about Margaret, about the inheritance that saved me, about the people who helped when they didn't have to. When I finished, a woman in the front row raised her hand. She was crying. "My daughter has power of attorney over my accounts," she said, "and I can't. I don't know if but I can't get money when I need it." After the presentation, 12 people came up to talk to me privately. 12 people who were living what I'd lived, who needed help, who thought they were alone. That's when I knew what I had to do with Margaret's gift. And every Christmas, I make sure children in foster care get gifts, because my mother was in foster care once. She never forgot what it felt like to be forgotten. Neither would I. That's how I honor Margaret Reeves, who I never met. That's how I honor my mother, who sacrificed everything, not by hoarding what they gave me, but by passing it forward, by making sure their love multiplies, by making sure other people feel protected the way I was protected. My son reached out once, about a year later. He wanted to apologize properly, to explain. I listened because I'd promised myself I wouldn't carry hate, but I also told him the truth. I forgave him, but I couldn't trust him. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal completely. We met at a neutral location, a park downtown. He looked older, worn down. He told me Sarah had left him, that she'd found someone else with money, that he realized too late what she was, what they'd done to me. "I was weak," he said. "I let her convince me you were being dramatic, that you needed to be managed. I told myself we were helping you." "You were helping yourselves," I said. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know that now. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that I see it now, what we did, what I allowed to happen." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, who I'd worked double shifts to give a better life, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not hatred, not even anger anymore, just sadness for what we'd lost, for the relationship we'd never get back. "I do forgive you," I said finally, "because carrying hate would poison me, not you. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean we go back to how things were. You made choices. You have to live with them." Sarah, I never heard from again. I don't know where they ended up, and I don't need to know. They made their choices. They'll live with them. I made different choices. I chose to survive. I chose to rebuild. I chose to help others who are trapped the way I was trapped. Now, 2 years later, I'm sitting in my own home, wearing whatever I want, eating whatever I want, doing whatever I want. The freedom still feels new sometimes. I'll wake up in the morning and for a second I'll panic, thinking I'm back in that small room with the locked door. Then I remember, I'm safe, I'm free, I'm protected. My mother's cardigan hangs in my closet. I don't wear it much anymore, but sometimes I take it out and hold it and thank her for loving me enough to stay connected to family, even family she never saw. Because if she hadn't written those letters to Margaret, I wouldn't have been saved. And sometimes I talk to Margaret too, this stranger who became my guardian angel. I tell her thank you. I tell her about the people I've helped. I tell her that her money didn't just save one life, it saved dozens, hundreds maybe, through the work I do. I think she'd like that. I think my mother would like it too. What I need you to understand, if you're listening to this and you're in a situation like mine, is that you are not powerless. Even when it feels like you have nothing, even when the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones hurting you, even when the system feels stacked against you, you are not alone. The Elder Justice Act of 2010 was the first comprehensive federal law on elder abuse. Most people don't even know it exists. Research proves that half of all people with dementia experience abuse, and countless more who don't have dementia suffer in silence because they're ashamed or afraid or don't know where to turn. I was all three. Ashamed that I'd trusted my own son. Afraid no one would believe me. Lost in a system that seemed designed to protect the abusers instead of the victims. But there are people like Dorothy out there. Social workers who care. Lawyers who specialize in elder abuse. Organizations that exist to help. You just have to reach out. You just have to ask. And if you're someone watching this happen to someone else, don't look away. Don't convince yourself it's not your business. That woman I met at the coffee shop, that stranger in the corner store who let me use their phone, Dorothy who kept calling even when I didn't answer, they all saved my life in different ways. Sometimes protection comes from the strangest places. Sometimes love reaches across decades and miles, and even death to catch you right before you fall. I was 58 years old when I lost everything. I'm 60 now, and I have more than I ever dreamed possible. Not just money, purpose, freedom, peace. And I know, without question, that I was loved. By my mother. By a stranger named Margaret. By people who helped me when they didn't have to. That's what I want you to take from this story. You are worthy of protection. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of help. And if you're going through something similar, if you're trapped and scared and don't see a way out, please know this. There might be help you don't know about yet. There might be resources you haven't found. There might be someone who died years ago who's still protecting you, still watching over you, still making sure you survive. Don't give up. Please don't give up. My mother used to say that love is the only thing that outlasts us, the only thing that matters when we're gone. She was right. Margaret's love for my mother's love for me, that love saved my life 30 years after the people who felt it had died. And now I'm trying to pass that love forward, to be someone's Dorothy, to be someone's unexpected help, to be proof that even when you're drowning in plain sight, someone might see you, someone might care. So let me ask you, where are you listening from? Are you safe? Do you have someone watching over you? Or are you the one doing the watching? Maybe you know someone in a situation like mine was. Maybe you're that person. Either way, I hope my story gives you something. Hope, maybe, or courage. Or just the knowledge that protection sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. My mother and Margaret are both gone now. But they're not finished loving me. Their love built a foundation I'm still standing on. Their sacrifice gave me a second chance at life, and I'm not wasting it. So if this story touched you, if it made you think or feel or remember someone you've lost who still protects you, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're from. Tell me who saved you when you needed it most. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about survival and hope and the power of love that transcends death, hit that subscribe button. Because I'm not done talking. I'm not done telling the truth about what it means to lose everything and find out you were never really alone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And thank you to my mother and to Margaret, who I never met, but who I think about every single day. You saved me, both of you. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure that love keeps going, keeps spreading, keeps protecting people who need it. That's my promise. That's my purpose. That's how I honor you both.